The hierarchy of power in the DC universe has finally changed. Scott Lang wrote a novel, and we're talking that Michael Jackson biopic. All this and more on the Chatter After Daily. Greetings, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Welcome to the Chatter After Daily, the show where we chat, argue, and wax poetic about everything in the world of movie news and pop culture. I'm Mike. Joining me is Ryan. We've got a lot to talk about. I think we should just dive into it, huh, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, we might as well.
So, we've got to talk about DC. We've been talking about this. We had a live stream yesterday, if you guys missed it, with Ren Geekness and my co-host Brandon Alvarado for the Chatter After, and we were kind of getting into some of the comic book inspirations and details from James Gunn's announcement. If you somehow have been living under a rock and you don't know what we're talking about, cool. We'll run through the list for you guys and break it down and give our thoughts on all of it. So, first up, James Gunn went on record saying that they are going to be resetting the DC universe. And I thought that was very interesting, Ryan. Like, he never full out said reboot. He said reset. And I think we're going to find as we kind of go forward through all of this why he is using that terminology and language when describing this new universe. But first off, what were your thoughts just like the initial announcement? Because there's a lot of obscure stuff mixed in with a lot of like known IP.
Yeah, and my whole theme regarding this announcement is cautious optimism, because I've been a DC fan for a minute now. I've even enjoyed some DCEU films that people are not a big fan of. I love Man of Steel. I get a lot of enjoyment out of Batman v Superman. I think that one is not as bad as some people make it out to be. So I am a bit of a DCEU defender in certain cases. But I think resetting is about as necessary a step as James Gunn can take. And I think that is about as wise a decision as you could hope for. Because even though I will miss Henry Cavill as Superman, getting a new Superman with a new creative force is really the smart option here. So announcing the slate, it's like, cool, James, I just need to see more now. I would like to see forward momentum, like a cast has been set or a writing team is in place. Announcements are cool, but you gotta give me some substance. Right now, I am hopeful, but I am weary, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. That's totally fair. Looking at the slate and seeing all these announcements, it kind of just plays deja vu a little bit, right? We've been here before. We're going to go back to 2014, right? Where Zack Snyder and the crew are at Comic-Con and they revealed their master plan and it didn't come to fruition. We've done this song and dance before. So now that DC is a proper studio, like DC Studios was not a thing up until a couple months ago, which is just wild to think about. How did they not have their own side of Warner Brothers with as much stuff as they churn out? They have animation over there. They've been making so many animated movies for Warner Brothers. You think they would have some form of a studio. So I'm glad that there's at least somebody manning this side of the company now, finally, for the first time ever. And you mentioned Superman, so we're going to jump in right quick and talk about Superman Legacy. It's the only film in the DCU that has a release date from this announcement. And James Gunn went on record actually earlier today and said, this artwork that we're seeing, this is the cover for All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison. And this is going to play a major factor and inspiration to how they develop this character and inform this character going forward. And for those who don't know, All-Star Superman follows an older Clark who's kind of at the end of his career. And the entire story is basically him saying, what can I do to help the world? How can I be the best hero, the best Superman I can be? And the entire book is him basically trying to do as much good as he can in the last few years of his life. It's very fascinating. But also, they're making a movie about a young Superman who is going to be roughly 25-ish. So I wonder how that might be a twist on it where he's aspiring to become this version of the character later down the line, you know, where he wants to become the world's greatest hero, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about All-Star Superman? And if not, just what are you expecting from this movie? Or what do you want to see from it?
So they made an animated version of All Star Superman. I watched that and I did enjoy that. So I was going to ask, isn't this the story where Superman absorbs the energy of our sun and
Yep.
it makes him the strongest he's ever been, but it's also slowly killing him? Am I on the right path?
Yep, that's the story.
Yeah, okay, so it's been a minute, but I do know this story, and I think this is I'm on board with this. If they're adapting All Star Superman as their first like launching point for this,
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Agreed. Like I appreciate that this movie again is the only one with a hard release date. I believe he said July 11th, 2025. So that's exciting. That means we should be getting some casting relatively soon too, right? In like the next few months, because they're gonna start shooting this end of the year, early next year. So that's great. And yeah, ignoring the Henry Cavill situation, you know, like even Gunn even went on record saying we never cast him. So all of that was unnecessary drama, unfortunately.
Just a waste of time.
Waste of everyone's time. It's so frustrating. Next up, we've got The Brave and the Bold. It is the story of Bruce discovering his son, Damian Wayne, who he did not know he had. He is the child of Bruce and Talia al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul's daughter. So Damian is the grandson of the Demon's Head, the League of Assassins. I think it's interesting how we kind of go back to the Al Ghuls, right? Because in the last Batman trilogy, they played a major factor in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises. So it is exciting to see Damian, though, and finally get Robin back on the big screen. And they even said that they're going to expand the Bat family in this film. So we should see Oracle, Batgirl, Red Robin, Red Hood, Nightwing, hopefully. Any thoughts on Brave and the Bold? How are you feeling about another Batman franchise?
So I have not read The Brave and the Bold. I know there was a Cartoon Network show called Batman the Brave and the Bold, which I really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And I know that there was an animated movie called Batman versus Robin. I sought that out because that had the Court of Owls storyline, my favorite comic storyline of all time. I'm kind of basic when it comes to comics. I haven't deep dived like you, Mike, or others, but the Court of Owls one was one that I actively sought out and just loved. So I'm glad they adapted it in animation. But Damian Wayne was in there, so I know who this character is. And I'm just glad that they're going to do a bit of the Bat family. You mentioned Red Hood. I believe you mentioned I know you mentioned Red Hood. I forget some of the others.
Yeah, Nightwing, Batgirl, Oracle. You know, those other characters.
I'm just glad that Gunn is going to branch out with that, because you forget how big the Bat family actually is, because for a long time in the movies, it's just been Batman alone by himself. It is like, there's so much untapped there that you can do with that. That's my point.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be fascinating. And I wonder what the through line of all of these are going to be, right? Because Gunn and Peter Safran have referred to this as Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. And Ra's al Ghul, the Al Ghuls in general, they can fit both categories, right? In the comics, Ra's al Ghul is immortal thanks to his Lazarus pits. So in a way, he's got the power of a god, but he's also known as the Demon's Head. And he can also be considered a monster for, you know, his reign of terror for hundreds of years and years that Batman has to try and stop now with presumably the help of his son. And even though Damian could also start out as kind of an antagonist, right? Because Batman versus Robin is a thing that we've seen a lot between these two specifically. It's going to be fascinating to see how they approach this story, especially with it running concurrently with The Batman, which is the other film that got a release date. It's coming out October 2025, which is a little ways away for that one. I was kind of hoping next year for Batman, but that's okay.
Hey, after the results of the first one, give Matt Reeves all the time he needs, because that first Batman movie was awesome. And I have a couple little nitpick story problems with it, but on the whole, that movie's just gotten better and better the more I've thought about it. So give Matt Reeves all the time he needs on that one.
For sure, for sure. We've got The Authority, which is an obscure team from Wildstorm, not even directly from DC Publishing initially. This is definitely a James Gunn pick, right? Where these are a bunch of unknown characters for the most part that the audience is just gonna have to fall in love with once we get there. I know that tonally they're on the edgier side. They were compared to The Boys at one point by some reporters, and I know for sure Gunn said most things in this universe are going to be PG-13, but if they give us like a darker, edgier Justice League type of team, that might be interesting. Do you have any thoughts on The Authority? I know they're very obscure.
Yeah, this was one I had to Google who they were.
Yeah,
because I'm kind of basic in the comics world, so there's some things that are just going to go way over my head. But just from seeing this pick, I said to myself, James Gunn did it with Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's going to try and do it again with this team. Mike, you're muted.
got it. Yeah, so I totally agree with that. I love this next pick though. It's Swamp Thing, and Swamp Thing as a character is fascinating. I love his entire story and universe, like that Justice League dark side of the DC universe. But we also got reports of James Mangold directing this film yesterday. And we kind of talked about that on that stream, but I wanted your thoughts because after his work on Logan and then, this next Indiana Jones movie looks incredible as well. Are you excited to see him tackle Swamp Thing?
I mean, totally, yes. My knowledge of Swamp Thing is incredibly limited. All I know is the clips I've seen from the Wes Craven one from the 80s, which is very, very cheesy. So it looks like if they're going to do it, I think they're going to do it with a bit of a harder edge. I believe, if I read the report right, it's going to be more of a horror slant, which just hits me right in the feels right there. And James Mangold is one of those directors who has yet to miss. Like, look up and down his filmography. I mean, maybe that obscure The Wolverine movie, the ending to that was not the best. I will give him that. But I mean, Copland, Logan, Ford v Ferrari, Walk the Line. You look up and down, James Mangold has yet to miss. And I'm slowly warming up to Indiana Jones 5, even though I'm still very worried about that. But that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time.
Yeah.
If they get Mangold to direct Swamp Thing, it'll rocket to the top of my most anticipated for this slate.
Yeah, for sure. Looking, going through a lot of the comments from Gunn and Safran, I'm really excited because it feels like even though they have this large 10-year plan, it's still going to be very creator driven, right? And apparently Mangold went to them with a Swamp Thing pitch. So I don't know if they had Swamp Thing in the original plans and he came at the perfect time, at the perfect storm. But I do think it's very fascinating how we're going to get a bunch of different creatives, a bunch of different styles within this universe. And we can already tell because tonally, these projects are vastly different. And I think one that's going to highlight that the most is Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. This is an adaptation of the Tom King run on Supergirl that actually is very new. So if you guys haven't read that book, one, go read it. It's phenomenal. It's only 8 issues too, so it's very short. But two, it's very new, so there's a chance that you guys haven't gotten it. So definitely go check it out. It's already sold out on Amazon, but you can still get it digitally. Go to local comic book shops. They need the support. I love that we're adapting an actual story from the comics instead of based on, which is what 90% of these movies do. I'm going to give you a little rundown right quick, Ryan, just in case you're not familiar with the concept of this story. It's set in space. If you guys are looking at the artwork here on the video feed, this does not take place on Earth. And James Gunn went on record saying that Kara is very different from Clark. She is in a very different place emotionally. She watched Krypton die. She watched her family die. She was basically like General Zod, right? Where she was born to become a soldier. And so she's a very different character from Clark. And most portrayals on screen of Supergirl kind of just made her female Superman. So it's going to be very exciting for me personally as a fan of the character to see a different version of or a more comic accurate version of the character and someone who's vastly different from who Clark is as a hero. What are your thoughts on this movie?
So again, this is another one where my knowledge is incredibly limited. All I know is that the CW had a Supergirl show for a while, and I believe it was also on CBS at one point, or maybe it was.
It started
I'm
at
not.
CBS and then it got canceled, and then the CW picked it up. Weird.
Oh, okay. I had it backwards, but
Yeah.
my knowledge is very limited. However, I think it just depends on who they get to play Supergirl. I think that would be interesting to see. And like you said, they're adapting something directly from the comics instead of just cherry picking several things, which could be very interesting.
Yeah, totes. I'm very excited for Supergirl. That might be my most anticipated. I want to see what they do with the Bat family, but Supergirl definitely is up there on my list. This is the weird one. Okay, it's not the weirdest one, but this is a weird one. Waller. And this sticks out to me because this goes back to what I was saying about phrasing, right? And not saying reboot, saying reset. And this is one of the remnants of the DCU or the DCEU that's going to carry over. Viola Davis is going to lead a Waller series, and they said with the cast of Peacemaker. So I wonder if this is replacing Peacemaker season 2, and like they're going to become supporting characters to Amanda Waller. How are you feeling about our first major holdover from the old regime? Right, they're not rebooting everything, and it conveniently happens to be the last thing James Gunn worked on.
I mean, if they're bringing back Viola Davis as Waller, then that automatically piques my interest right there because she's awesome.
Yeah,
but lest we forget, James Gunn directed The Suicide Squad. So if there's some connection, and I know you said Peacemaker is involved in this, so there is a connection. But if there's a definite connection between The Suicide Squad and this series, I'd be interested.
Yeah, he mentioned the Peacemaker cast, so I assume. And if you guys go to Gizmo, they had a great interview with Safran and Gunn, and they mentioned that John Cena is confirmed to be returning, which is great because Peacemaker was a fantastic show. Can't wait to see where this goes, especially if we can pick up where we left off. It ends on a pretty wild cliffhanger, so I'm excited to see where that goes. The next one is Creature Commandos, and this is a series that you can see is another continuation, quote unquote, because we've got Weasel right here from the Suicide Squad. Among the rest of these monsters, we've got Frankenstein's monster, we've got Bride of Frankenstein, we've got a bunch of different characters. It's an animated project, but Gunn also said that they're going to be crossing over into the live action because everything is now a unified story. I love the art style. This is not a comic book panel. This is official art from the show, and I think it looks gorgeous. I really dig it. Again, there's not a lot to go off of, but are you excited for Creature Commandos?
Just from looking at this picture, I am very excited. I mean, seeing Frankenstein and the Bride there is just speaking to my love of the Universal monsters. I believe the hero next to the flaming skeleton. Does that look like? Is that? It kind of looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon, but it's probably not, right?
I'm gonna be real, I don't recognize anyone here, but like I feel like if we've got Frankenstein, it wouldn't shock me if they did. So I don't recognize anyone here except for Weasel, unfortunately.
But just looking at this animation style, it really is something I would be interested in. When I did Google this team, I found out that the Frankenstein's monster here was created by Dr. Victor Frankenstein. So there's at least that going for it. I don't know how it's going to work in the continuity or if they're just going to ignore that. They're probably going to ignore it because of the whole rights thing. But this definitely piques my interest.
Yeah, I'm excited to check it out. We've got a couple more here. We can speed through these. Booster Gold. Booster Gold is a strange character because he's from the future and he uses time travel technology to come to present day, the past, his past, and masquerade as a superhero. He's not a superhero. He basically steals tech and tries to live out his dream of being a big shot. It's like if I took an iPhone back to the 1800s, right? I will look like a god. So that's his character, and like they said, the entire story is imposter syndrome, and he's gonna have to learn how to become an actual hero in this universe. It's a very interesting concept and a very fun character. He's another a-hole. That's why Gunn probably picked it. He's got some major Star-Lord vibes, qualities to him. You excited to check this out? This is a series too. This is not a movie. This will be probably an HBO series.
There's definitely some potential here, and I can't remember where I saw this on Twitter, but I saw this on Twitter. This user was doing the whole post your fantasy casting choices for Booster Gold, and I'll reply with a good picture of Booster Gold or like a wrecked picture of Booster Gold. And there were some that were wrecked, but two that stuck out of the choices that I saw on the thread were Glenn Powell, aka Hangman from Top Gun Maverick, and Matt Bomber, who has been in a lot of things, but I know from the USA series White Collar. So yeah. I think if they get either one of those two, I think there's a lot of potential here, like I said.
Glenn Powell would be perfect casting for Booster Gold, honestly.
Hangman, just based on my limited knowledge of Booster Gold, Glenn Powell was kind of having Booster Gold qualities in Top Gun Maverick, if I can be so bold.
He definitely was, but that takes us to the next one. I think he'd be a great Hal Jordan too, though, right? And
maybe that's a good point too. Yeah,
maybe seeing him as a pilot 2 times in 1 year really kind of skewed how I view Glenn Powell. But I think he'd be an amazing Hal Jordan. It's like, dude, maybe we split the difference and make Matt Booster Gold and Glenn gets to be Hal Jordan. But we get Lanterns, another series, and this is another quote from Gunn and Saffron. They were asked, how did they come up with the decision, what becomes a movie, what becomes a series? And they just said scope. Green Lantern is a story that is going to take them about 10 hours to tell, whereas Supergirl will take 2 hours to tell. And that is really the only reason there's a difference between the film and television side, because since it's all one unified vision and universe, they're able to just kind of fluctuate what becomes a series, what becomes a movie. So Lanterns is going to be a 10-episode series that follows Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, and it's going to be major True Detective vibes, according to Gunn, which that by itself is a fascinating concept. True Detective in space with these lanterns. How are you feeling about that?
I'm definitely intrigued by that, and it's certainly, I mean, after that terrible Green Lantern movie, there really is nowhere left to go but up for the Lanterns.
That's fair. Very fair. I'm excited to see where it goes. I love how it's called Lanterns and not Green Lantern. So that's going to be great. We can follow the entire spectrum of colors in the Lantern Corps, which is cool.
Yeah, I was going to say that definitely opens up the door for the Red Lanterns and the Yellow Lanterns.
Yep.
I mean, even if they want to go crazy, the Black Lanterns. Because, yes, I totally know what those are because I read Blackest Night.
See, okay, you were talking about your comic book knowledge being limited. You read Blackest Night. You are already way better off than a lot of other readers. Oh, that's a deep cut for the general audience. But yeah, if they go Black Lanterns, I honestly wouldn't be surprised because Gunn went on record saying that this show is a major event and it's going to lead to the next big thing in the DC universe. So what if they discover Black Lanterns and that becomes the first Justice League movie? That might be kind of cool. We're going to the past, though, with this one. This is a series, Game of Thrones style, according to James Gunn. This is called Paradise Lost, Wonder Woman. We're going into a prequel with the Amazonians on Paradise Island, and we're basically going to be seeing the war that happened before Diana's birth. It's going to be fascinating, in my opinion, to kind of tackle that mythology. I think the Amazonians are one of the most fascinating characters in the DC universe. Group of characters. I love Donna Troy. I love Artemis. I love Nubia. I love like every major hero we've gotten from this part of the DC pantheon. Does this like Game of Thrones Wonder Woman style? Gunn knows how to pick his buzzwords, right, to get us excited with these shows. Where are you at
Yeah.
on Paradise Lost?
All he needs to do is say, but like The Sopranos said in the DC universe, or Deadwood said in the DC universe. Like, just run through all of HBO's greatest hits right there. Like, I mean,
Right?
Deadwood. I mean, just pitch that as the Jonah Hex show if they wanted to. If they want to do that,
They really could, honestly. Like, so one thing before we end our DC coverage, one thing that I really noticed is that Gunn said that this is just the tip of the iceberg. He has other things that he can't even clue us in on yet in chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. And I wonder how it's all going to kind of tie together. But I think he's going to be building something great. I love the diversity in the stories and the characters. We have big, we have small, we have movies, we have shows, we've got animation. I'm very excited to see how this all comes together. It's going to be a fun few years when we finally get the ball rolling. Hopefully, this last hurrah of the DCEU goes well because we've got Shazam, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and the next Aquaman movie. All right, we've got through the DC stuff. Before we call this an episode, we got to go back to Michael, the biopic. This report is coming from Deadline. It's always Deadline, I swear. Jafar Jackson is going to play the King of Pop. They say, quote, the singer and songwriter is the son of Jermaine Jackson, who's the brother of Michael and a member of the Jackson 5. Jafar has been singing and dancing since he was 12 and has showcased himself singing tunes from Sam Cooke to Marvin Gaye, along with his originals. We talked about this last week, about the Emancipation director helming this Michael Jackson biopic from the crew who brought us Bohemian Rhapsody. How are you feeling on Jafar Jackson being cast to play his uncle?
I have no complaints really. I mean, I was kind of surprised that they actually got a family member to actually play Michael here. I think that was I did not consider that initially, but I'm low key kind of glad that they did, and I like how they're keeping it in the family like that, and this just gets me more excited for this.
Just look at him, right? Like, that is spot on. That is well done, especially since he can sing. I verified before we went live. The kid can sing, so this is going to be great casting. Hopefully, again, I'm not a huge fan of Bohemian Rhapsody. I wasn't a fan of Emancipation either, so I'm hoping that this movie turns out to be good. We've got a couple things left on the docket, Ryan, and then we're going to call this a show. We've got to talk about this Ant-Man book. I love Paul Rudd so much, and seeing Scott Lang officially get his book is so fun. I'm pulling up the video here for you guys in the feed so you can see the presentation. So we're going to read the synopsis right quick. Look Out for the Little Guy is the title of the book, and it says, quote, this is the incredible story of an ex-con turned world-saving superhero. In Look Out for the Little Guy, Scott Lang shares with the world his honest account of his struggles and triumphs. From serving time and being a divorced dad to becoming Ant-Man and joining the Avengers, these are stories of epic battles won and lost. And I love how at the bottom of the description, it has a pull quote from Bruce Banner, and it says, introduces the man behind the hero and the hero I call friend. I can't believe this is real. This is something, not the New York Times. I can't believe this is real. This is something that he was advertising. If you guys remember, this is just a giant Easter egg in Miss Marvel. We see that he has a podcast called Big Me, Little Me, and he's advertising this book. And it is so funny that this book is now real. You can pre-order it from Barnes & Noble. It's $27 for some reason. I'm not paying that much for this book, though. I wish we get an audio version of it read by Paul Rudd.
I work at a library, Mike. I'll hook you up.
Perfect. Perfect. I came up with this poster for it, by the way. It'll change your life. Trent Krim, the Independent. Had to get a Ted Lasso joke in there. Are you like, again, this is just big marketing campaign for Quantum Mania, which comes out in a couple of weeks. Are you willing to check this book out at any point if it's at your library?
I mean, I'd at least give it a rent. I mean, just to see if, because I'm a pro wrestling fan, and long story short, there's this character named Kane.
Mhm.
It's a whole story, but anyway, in the character, in the style of the character being basically like survived a childhood fire set by his older brother, wore a mask for years, but had it taken off in a match. Again, it's a whole complicated thing. But in
Yeah.
2006, WWE released a book called "The Twisted Tale of Kane," and it was told entirely in character of the wrestler, not the wrestler writing the book out of character, but in the character, the entire story written by the wrestler. I kid you not. I cannot make that up. So
That's
this is
hilarious.
so this Ant-Man book is not the strangest thing that I've come across like this. So I mean, it's genius marketing. I'm willing to read it, but it's just wild. That's all I can say.
It's so funny, and I hate that I might cave and actually buy this book because Paul Rudd can sell me on anything.
Could sell ice to an Eskimo.
He really can. Before we go, because we're wrapping up, we're gonna just run through things coming out this week. We've got 80 for Brady. Tom Brady retired. I don't buy it. I think it's just marketing again.
Yeah.
The Amazing Maurice and Knock at the Cabin, which I know you've been leading up to on your channel, everything with the Shyamalan project. Anything stick out for you for this week's release?
Well, obviously, Knock at the Cabin. I mean, that's the one I'm definitely going to be seeing, and the reviews have been incredibly positive, which considering that Shyamalan's not the most well-liked director in certain circles, seeing these many positive reviews are very intriguing. Every trailer has gotten me more excited for it. So yeah, it's definitely this one. I'm surprised that The Amazing Maurice is coming to a theater even close to me. So if I have the time, I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, I definitely want to check out Knock at the Cabin. I think that movie looks really good. And Ren Geekness, who was on yesterday talking in the live stream, he did a review. It's a great review. Go check out on his channel. He loved the movie, and I can't wait to check it out. The Amazing Maurice isn't playing near me, but I'm hopeful that I get it at least in a couple weeks. If it's not here, it usually takes a couple weeks to get here. So I'm excited for that. You have anything coming up, Ryan, before we call this a show?
Yes, well, actually, at the top of the hour, 9 Eastern, I'll be going live with my good friend Jacob Collins over at the Channel 3D Movie Cinema. I will be wrapping up the Shyamalan project with a review of Split, so go over to my channel and check that out if you are so inclined. I'll be continuing my road to Creed 3 by reviewing Rocky 5, which I have not seen in forever. Have not heard good things, but hey, it's going to be interesting for a rewatch. And then, of course, I will be reviewing Knock at the Cabin when I do see it. I'm planning on Saturday night, so
Nice.
a review of that will definitely be in the pipeline.
Wonderful. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe here on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitch, make sure you give us a follow and talk to us in the chat. We love getting your comments and getting your thoughts on everything we've been talking about here on TCA Daily, on the YouTube channel and the podcast feed. We do Beyond the Clickers every Tuesday at 8:30 Eastern. Make sure you're there live talking with us. We're going to be talking The Last of Us episode 4. It's going to be a good one. This last week was another great one. As far as episodes of the Chatter After, we're talking God of War Ragnarok. We're talking Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery, and a few other things that we can't talk about just yet. But until next time, guys, keep watching movies, keep streaming shows, keep reading comics, and until next time, stay awesome.
Good night.